Now, this panel explores Bangalore's vibrant past and present through its textile history, and I'm really honored to introduce our speakers to you. We have Jeevan Savior. Jeevan's exhibition has been happening outside since Friday. Jeevan is an entrepreneur, designer, and an artist based in Bangalore. They're a self-taught and multidisciplinary artist whose subject matter is personal, stemming from encounters with social conflicts. Currently, Jeevan manages a textile design art research studio in Bangalore called JLX Studio. The studio engages in documentation and research in areas of folklore and vernacular culture in South India alongside commercial design products. We have today, along with Jeevan, Archana Hande, who holds a BFA in print and MFA in printmaking from Vishwabharati Shantiniketan and MS University, Baroda. Her artwork and creative practice spans diverse modes, venues, and themes. As an artist and curator and organizer, Hande's creative journey has been multifaceted. She was awarded the Charles Wallace India Trust Arts Award in 2000 and a research residency by Pro Helvetia, Switzerland in 2010. Notable solo exhibitions include I Am a Landscape Painter in Bombay and www.arrangeyourownmarriage.com, showcased internationally. Hande's work has been prominently featured in major group shows such as the Kochi Musiris Biennale, Sharjah Biennale, and the Seoul Media City Biennale. And finally, our moderator is Suresh Jairam, a familiar face to all of us. Suresh is an artist, an art historian, an arts administrator, and a curator from Bangalore. He's the founder and director of Visual Arts Collective, One Shanti Road Studio, an international artist residency and alternative art space in Bangalore. He has edited the book titled Whatever He Touched, He Adorned, 2010, on HG Krumbigal, a fabulous resource on Krumbigal, and also authored Bangalore's Lal Bagh, a chronicle of the garden and the city in 2021, which was awarded by Heritage Beku for Heritage Literature in 2023. The book is available in the bookstore outside with Artagalata. Over to you, Suresh.
Thank you. Thank you. We all came together oddly because although we are friends, we don't put our heads together and think about a certain project. So IFA had a program where we kind of came together to create a curated project which brings urban textiles together. And the exhibition which you see outside also is a fragment of what we put up during the show 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And Jeevan I've known for a very long time. Archana and me studied together at MS University, Baroda. And we are classmates, that's what she tells everybody. Because she thinks nobody takes her seriously and they'll take me seriously with my beard. So that's the whole story. But there are a lot of ideas, but when we put things together, it's very interesting to know that many interesting forms come together. Archana has been doing some fantastic installations in the city, a last show at Sumuka Art Gallery, which you will see, using the research that we all were part of. Jeevan is an entrepreneur, but he's an artist at heart. So he has a soft corner for the visual arts and soft corner for Shanti Road, I think. So he comes, he says he gets inspired, he's always interacting with artists. Which is what brings us together. So I'm just going to show you the first slide from my batch. I've called it Fabric Fables because firstly acknowledging somebody who just gets pushed away in art history and in our daily routine of acknowledging Mr. Tipu Sultan because somehow, because of his valorous exploits, he's been put away by the powers may be. And Tipu has a very important role to play in textiles for the important reason that he was somebody who was a modernist in terms of bringing in a lot of material culture into Mysore. You might have seen the Tipu's tiger, but at the same time you know about his legendary rockets that surprised the British. But more interestingly, because of the fabric connection, he was the one who first saw some silk which the French gave him, and he sent emissaries, one to Oman, the other one to China. And the Chinese guy, I think he got lost or something like that. But he did come back with some cocoons because that's what you need for, and mulberry leaves. So next. Here is an image some of you might be familiar with, the Maharani on the extreme right, Deva Jammani, and that's what her name is. She's all of 12 years, about to get married, and she's doing something very unusual. She's lifting up her pallu to show her arm. That's where she got vaccinated. So vaccination was an important thing, and at that time, smallpox vaccination was not given to many of them because they thought it's going to pollute one's body. So this is a very interesting image, thanks to Sotheby's, which came up to sale later on, early 19th century. But an amazing image which talks about the modernity of Mysore and how it is much different from the modernity which we see from when British comes into the picture. So here, this painting proclaims this vaccination taken by the royalty and telling everybody you have to be vaccinated for smallpox. And what these women are wearing is silk. Obviously, probably Mysore silk, and very interesting jewelry, etc., which you can see, which is very typical of that period. Next. So here are some botanical drawings of the mulberry leaves and what is most important, the wasp that makes the silk. So, and this was again, what survived in Mysore was what came from China. And these mulberry bushes were grown. Tipu encouraged this whole thing of sericulture in its infancy. Then later on what happened was, it kind of died after Tipu's death. Then an interesting thing happened that the Maharaja of Mysore took initiation, and the image earlier was also trying to represent something from the Maharajas. And these worms, the seeds, and the eggs are so important to develop a sericultural industry in its infancy. Next slide. So this is a market in Ramnagara. Everybody knows as you go to Mysore, you stop there and you see it's the largest silk, cocoon market in Asia. And the amount of business done there is incredible. I don't know the cash transactions, but a lot of money gets transacted by local villages and the people who buy these cocoons and from where silk is going to be made. Next. Next. So very happy, I can call them farmer because they all farm the silk around in small villages, and there are these big circular things called chandrike, which is like almost concentric circles where these eggs are put and a lot of mulberry leaves are placed. If you go and enter anybody's house, they'll be happy to show you. Next. And strangely enough, Tata was very interested. There's already a slide over there which Jeevan has put on, but Tata silk farm, somewhere very close to Chamrajpet and that area, everybody heard about it, but nobody knew what Tata silk farm was, because Tata brought in two Japanese, a Japanese couple to come here and explore the idea of, cultivating silkworms and also the idea of weaving silk. The Japanese had a special technique for weaving silk, which was quite sophisticated. And this particular industry, which was a very small-scale industry, benefited from this whole process of the Tata silk farm. And here, silk, from this time, silk was here to stay. So it's no longer a small-scale industry. It almost got an identity, Mysore silk, Bangalore silk. So today, if you want to go and buy Bangalore silk and you go to a shop, they'll say, there's nothing like Bangalore silk. Jeevan? Yeah, there's nothing like Bangalore silk? Depends on So these are questions that we need to ask because there are, like when we did this research, we also met up with the Vimor people and they said there was something called cotton pit sari. So we didn't know at all. Then she pulled out some sari, which she said, this is from cotton pit because this weave is very typical. And even today, when you go to Kabbanpet and other areas around in the center of Bangalore, you realize that there are these small weaving factories. They've been mechanized now, that I think Archana will tell you more. But before that, there were pit looms, and they made hand loom saris. And if you are maybe fortunate, if you go somewhere on Banarghatta Road, where me and Archana visited, and and Shantamani, somewhere near the Tatguni estate, you still have weavers creating hand loom in pit looms, which is extremely rare. Next. This is the famous Binni mills. Like, if I remember anecdotally that my father used to drag me to MG Road and make sure I buy only Binni clothes from Binni. I mean, there was no choice. You know, he made sure that I buy Binni clothes. Everybody wanted to buy a Binni blanket. There were woolens, which were very popular. So it had a name for itself, and Binni mill had a long history, which I think some of it is here, but there was a long, very interesting, detailed account of Binni mills, and Jeevan had met somebody who was working there, and he found a lot of memorabilia of the Binni mills. So unfortunately, now there is next slide. So this was this one looks like images from the web, which I pulled out, but it looks like the Japanese couple are here. And
this is the Tata silk.
yeah, these are the only images of, floating around. I don't know how we can get more. It'll be very fascinating to know more about it. Anybody who wants to do a research, please follow this up. This is an amazing photographs which I just pulled off from the net. Next. Next. So this is the kind of silk which generally is being sold off as Mysore silk or Bangalore silk, etc. And there's when people go to a particular city, like when they come to Bangalore, this is what they want to buy. How much of it is Mysore silk or Bangalore silk is very doubtful. Because most of the silk comes from China, as far as you know, right?
Until very recently, it was largely regulated by the government, and they made sure that first the production in India is consumed, then they gave Chinese silk. So that was also imported only by government until 90s.
Next slide. I think he has got more to say. This is the famous Mysore crepe sari. KSIC sells it. I think all women know about it. Or even men if they want to buy it for their wives and loved ones. Next. These are also images from which are pulled out from the net of the Binni mills. Next. Sorry, I think there's a double slide. That's it. Okay, this is very fascinating how Bangalore silk landed up as these wedding gowns. So when you might all know of the NGMA, right? So it was somehow owned by the Manikyavelus, who were Modliyas, were extremely rich, and they got this particular building from Ismail Seth, who was selling it off. And these people were into mining and at the same time into silk industry. So why they got interested in the silk industry is parachutes in the World War II were made by this particular silk, and they got some grant from, I think, the government to produce more of this silk so that it will be used in parachutes. So the strange reality of this is when somebody got shot and the parachutes fell down, wherever it fell down, women ran across the field, didn't even bother to help this guy who was dying, cut the parachutes and took it back home because it was silk which was going to be repurposed to be made into a wedding gown. And this probably is Mysore silk or Bangalore silk. So it's a kind of a bittersweet story, but at the same time it talks about recycling, it talks about the very ingenious way these women bravely went into the fields and picked these silk fabrics and said, okay, let's repurpose it. And they waited for their husbands to come back from the war to get married to them. So these are some very treasured fabrics that talk about a big, long history which is intercontinental almost. Where is Mysore? Where is Manikyavelu? Where is Tipu Sultan? And now it's in somebody else's gown, which is preserved in a textile museum, etc. Next. So here are these very prized, you can make out the texture. I think maybe it's slightly embroidered or something, but it does look like this particular silk that is commonly seen everywhere. And it was kind of repurposed for a happy occasion. My slideshow ends now. Yeah, here are some more images. So these are some of the most important kind of memorabilia of not only World War, but also how the movement of fabric moves from one place to another because of people, because of certain ways of weaving, and the material culture moves from one place to another. So this is an interesting anecdote which I thought I'll put together, from Tipu Sultan to these bridal gowns that are so fascinating to see. Archana has worked on them in her work and she'll tell you more. So can we have slides from Jeevan first? Archana? Okay. She said you have to lay down the context, so this is what I've done. So
Thanks, Suresh. Actually, the parachute, which the same silk went from here to Calcutta, and then from Calcutta distributed. So in Calcutta, the merchants, the babus, the Bengali babus, they used to steal from the packet a little bit out and give it to their daughters. And they used to really have these frocks and all this. But the only complaint, because all those ladies are now in the 80s or 90s. So when I interviewed few of them, they said, only problem was the color was only army color. There was no bright colors, to make. So it was like a complaint in a way, but they were also has this luxury to have the silk. But when it comes to silk, as he has laid down, and it becomes a little important part in the Indian history. For me, it was very interesting because I been an insider, but mainly an outsider of Bangalore. So for me, I also look at it from the aerial view. Being in Bombay for 22 years, looking at the Bombay history, and especially the textile and how the Manchester of East they used to call, and the whole trading. And so I'm being very interested in the trade and the migration and the identity. So from 2009, we have been collaborating with the history of Bangalore, which we are still yet to complete that project. And we are not completing so that we retain our friendship and our phone calls, I think. But the silk, for me, it was very interesting. As when I speak, I also would speak as an outsider, not too much in love with Bangalore, but also having that angle.
1 minute. I need to justify why she's an outsider of Bangalore, because most of her, although she's Kannadiga, knowing her name Hande, we said that Karnataka government has an award which says Horanadu Kannadiga Prashasti, which basically means it's given to an outsider for some great contribution to Kannada, and Archana has not yet got it. Yes. So we want her to get this award.
And the day I shifted in Bangalore, there is a cafe which came across me called Haranadu Cafe. So I think that solves the whole thing. But to look at the silk in a way for me was very interesting, that actually silk means China. It came, and when we look at the Silk Route and trading and all the history. But even in the whole European history, the China word itself translated as silk, so the identity of it. Okay, we know what all Tipu would have sent spies and all kind of thing to get the way how to grow silk. Because they had a very strong thing that the secret of growing silk for many, many centuries. And so from the beginning, we had silk, the thread came from there, even if you look at the Banaras or the Calcutta or all these, but it came from China till then Tipu brings this secret from them. And then we say Bangalore silk. So and again now it's gone back to China silk. So how do you really take the identity away? and make it yours. Was very interesting in these kind of routes. So it is still a silk from China, in a very theoretically. In the same way, when I look at the weaving circuit, even it's a pitloom, or so when we look at the jacquard weaving sector, which comes from France, and again the Mysore king brings in, and then we have our saris and parachutes, and then the Bangalore as it becomes a brand, and it's been always a brand, if you look at it. Till from the beginning, if we say, there was a ship also called Bangalore ship. It was almost like 100 years it ran for the British, for the East India Company, and it was called Bangalore. And it also has the same story as Titanic. It really collapsed and we couldn't find it in a way. But like that, there is a lot of, the Bangalore word itself is a brand from the day one. It is not like now we are suddenly feeling that. So when we now say, though, there is no Bangalore silk anymore, and we start feeling that identity crisis and all this, and again it has gone back to China. But this whole trading of economics is always been there around. So, but for me, interesting thing in Bangalore, what happened between the Tipu and and Maharaja, I'm not sure Jivan would agree, because once we had that discussion, is I like the way it became a silk no more became a exclusive material. Because of jacquard, and because of jacquard weaving and the material, the way they grew, it became that even a middle class could buy it. And in a very lower, though there would have been a scale of the quality, but still that became a commercial kind of, even if it is a pitloom or it's a handloom, for jacquard it doesn't make sense, because it just that power loom helped the weavers to have a little bit help in but the weaving technique was the same. You needed the weavers anyways, So the romance between the handloom and power loom, I don't agree totally too much to it, So if I look at the second, so for me, the center one is majorly the Bangalore center, where the main silk weavers were, or the jacquard, that is the Kabanpet. Now, they have been shifted to the Yalanka and Tatkuni. Okay, so they are outside the circle in a way. But why in today's day shifting that is because a lot of sound and sound pollution. Now the jacquard weaving has this kind of weaving thing which always, but it has been there from 250 years, that sound. And suddenly today is a problem. Till 200 years we never had a problem. Then we figure out what is the land value. And it's the same history what Bombay had. It's the land value is really going, and the shifting happens. But what happens when it shifts is also a question mark in a place like any place. But if I take the example of Bangalore, now jacquard, if we say, is the first binary code which was created in 1700 by jacquard, which gave a technology to make a computer. The first programming happened because of these punching cards, which was made for textile. And then the computer programming and everything. But the jacquard machines had to wait 300 years to become computerized here. So it took so long, though it was an inspiration. So when these are now shifted, the owners are, though they were power loomed in the center, saying that why do we need, we can computerize it, then we don't need a weaver anymore. We need a supervisor. Now tomorrow when AI comes, we don't need a supervisor. It is that kind of thing basically is happening, and that is where we are losing the jobs and economy because of and the skill also. And these weavers, which 250 years or 300 years back, the king would have brought them from all the rural areas, which I think he will know better, and were trained to be a weaver. And now the cycle, it goes back to, now they don't have a land in the village. They're no more a farmer because that tradition is not yet learned by the new generation. Now what happens is they become upgraded, fantastic with technology. They get upgraded with the machine. But what happens in our country would be a total question mark. The other thing which, and so now the skilled labor, artisans, they are so skilled and they're so specific to it. They're not illiterate. They're educated in their field. But they are not multifaceted like us that we can suddenly go and teach somewhere. So how many weavers will a college ask to teach this technique? What they do, they become nowadays a labor construction workers. That's because Bangalore now needs more construction. So it is a deterioration or demotion, I would say, of their working. So they're not a working class in a labor class. So that is something a loss. But then what happens in the center where they are, that is a very connected. So they have a wrestling home, they have a massage center, they have a community center. All those are linked in a way. So one gets displaced, everything gets displaced. Though in today's day, the wrestling place is becoming a gym. The massage centers are becoming something else. Community centers have no need of community centers. We have Swiggies and all those kind of things, even the kitchen and all those. So those kind of thing is also disrupting, and now we will see the pates or, so if we want to be still romantic, nostalgic, romantic time, then we would say that that is going no more in 10, 20 years. It is going to become what today we see the outer ring road of Bangalore, or, so you have to accept that because it is the most fast growing, promising city in the world, actually, in a way, the way Bangalore has. It's not like a slow progress in Bombay, what we saw, or other cities. So the next slide. So this, of course, is Kabbanpet, where I have worked with, and that is one of the Tatguni which has been shifted. And next. So these are the places where, these are the pitloom thing, and the whole village basically in Tatguni, now they established and everything is done. But the thing is now, if I look at the pitloom, and people would say, oh, handloom and this and that. So that guy has 4 weaving machines, looms, and they take 4 or 5 days to make one sari, and that one sari will give you 800 rupees. Now fit 4, so in a week you have 4, and there are 4 weavers, and then you have to give the rent because the owner is different and the weaver is different. So the owner needs a certain thing, and then he has 4 kids. So it's a kind of not. But if I have power loom, in one loom, at least 7, 8 saris will come, and that also has the same rate, 800 or 400. So, but these are not specialized, designed for a boutique. They are for the mass production. So we need to understand the industrialization, the whole small scale, and that is where Bangalore city played the economy of, the main financial thing of, that's why it was one of the textile city, if you look at it. Next. So this is the power loom, so it's like the verses. Next. Yeah, I'm just showing you the areas which they were here and now they are there. So the locations which they are changing. So I've been working on this thing for a few years, and so I, as an artist, so started collecting these jacquard punching cards because these were binary codes and all these data. But then I realized now they only need a pen drive actually, because all these are not required. This is also required for handloom and for powered loom, it doesn't matter. But now as they're shifting to an computer-based, so you don't need, so I can be living anywhere and I have to just send. So they're also throwing, but every Diwali they throw these because now the thing is fashion changes very soon. So that's also one problem is like, so these punching cards for them, 25,000, 30,000 initial expenditure to make those cards. Pen drive would save that, first of all. And then in a month, the fashion has changed. And you don't need, you won't have the demand, so again. So I've been collecting and they have been sending me these cards like in bulk. So they're happy to send one truck also. So I have been, I call this weaving lights, using the light, it's a timer light, it's a digitized light, and your phone light, and you throw the shadow from these punching cards, and basically it's choreographed. It's a timer light, so it's a choreographed. And I created an installation telling the whole migration and the instability at this point of these weavers, that they, what do? They can't go back, or what their situation is. So how do you actually navigate that, and also the displacement of everything, you know? So can just go on, yeah. So these are the different kinds of lights which you could create by choreographing. And then I also was trying to look at the history and materials which they were giving me and to tell a story. Next. So with, next, just, yeah. So this is basically a carpet made out of security labels, which they also make security labels, which even the McDonald's watchman will have security, called security. So all those things I was collecting and making a kind of carpet. But in center, actually, it is the kaban pate and the materials they were giving, and I made a quilt. Next. So if you look at the kaban pate, it actually looks like a flight. And so I was creating with the same jari saris, which they, because jacquard made it possible to make it industrialized and mass production in a very easy way. So that's something they were giving. And next. Yeah. So then I started talking about the panels and all, which till now, whatever I have spoken is all in this, but creating costumes and telling the stories and also collecting a lot of textile labels and stories. So this is about kaban pate of the displacement thing. Next. This is about the industrial versus the domestic tailors. What are their kind of thing. Then, yeah, next. And this is the parachute story, which he said, and I have elaborated more. And, so this is a Binny Mills. Again, now Binny Mills has a very interesting story. He might know better on the whole union fight and the whole textile labor union thing, which is again, it's an interesting part. Again, contemporary and parallel to Bombay fight. So people would blame them for the closure, but then again, Binny Mills also has the same story of the land becoming the more valuable and more profitable than the. And this is on the copyright. What is the mass production and for the mass, and what does a copyright really make a thing. It was part of my show, which doesn't, it also is a larger issue where somebody, for them it doesn't matter that one design you get and everybody shares, and they have to have a mass, and every month it changes the design. And this is on the Devanga community, which is a community again from that center. So I've taken only one community as example who has been they think that the god has appointed them to be the weaver. And they are the people who came from the village and then settling, and now they're again displaced. So like as much the silk, I would say, is in the cycle of coming from China and now going back as an economy to China. So these people also are now driven away to the rural area. So, yeah, and just few, yeah, you can. Yeah, so this is the last, using the construction material. I basically use this because they are now in this stage, and I built their story on this structure in a way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So Jeevan, you have to tell us your story and interest in trying to narrate the history of weaving textiles through your research and your team's research, which I think you're continuing to do.
Yes.
So can we have Jeevan's slides?
Jeevan doesn't have slides. Well,
Okay, he told me that I forgot, but most interestingly, that how did you take this forward?
so thankfully, both of your slides kind of complemented to say what I wanted to say. Before that, I just want to see there are about 36 of us here in the room. Does anybody here doesn't have a phone? Anybody without a phone? Nobody, right? So if I have to see clothes, footwear, and then now mobile phones, that's the order I see it. How important mobile phones and these tiny devices that rule us. Because now there's no more life that we can think of having without mobile phones. Why am I saying this? Because in 1995, when I started studying textile, there was no mobile phone. Leave alone mobile phone, a lot of us did not have access to telephones itself, right? So from then, there was a time when there was nothing, to today, it is there in everybody's hand. Like I remember this slogan, ad slogan, Kar lo duniya mutti mein. Like, I don't know whether we have the world in our hands, but our own souls and everything, our being has become this. We date through these mobile phones, we access data, we bank through them, we order our food, it monitors your heart rate and whatnot, everything is there. So that is this level we've come to. Again, why am I saying that? In 1995, when I started textile, whatever I studied, the technology, the material, hasn't changed in these 30-odd years. Whereas the telecom industry has become something else. And that brings back to the question both of you said, textile has a very long but slow history. After industrialization, there hasn't been like very big technological advancement. After the Second World War, interestingly, the parachute was there in the First World War. Yeah. It was not on the Second World War. By Second World War, we had invented polyester, nylon, acrylic, everything. So technological advancement in textile has been slow. And when Archana was mentioning about Devangas, they are not the only community, but there are many communities and castes involved in textile making and selling. Because the traders, there is a caste across the country who are into trading. So how do we understand this? Because there are no computer caste, or there's no caste which is into telecommunication. These are all completely new things. But this industry, that more than industry, I look at it as an ecosystem in Bangalore. That is what I've come to understand through this research that we've been doing and a lot of interviews. Thankfully, my colleague Pranati is here. She met many, many people from the communities and traders and industrialists to gather these stories through which we've understood, or whatever I've understood right now. First is the place. Suresh showed us many pictures of sericulture. See, sericulture, one, Tipu Sultan brought it, and this Mysore to Bangalore, this terrain is also very conducive to the cultivation of silk. It couldn't have happened in any other place. That's one. Second, Bangalore, after the fall of Vijayanagara, a lot of people have migrated to this side of the country. I wouldn't say just Bangalore, but in and around Bangalore, a lot of weavers and traders. We keep forgetting this big piece of people, traders, who've been very instrumental in making these things possible, and the patronage of government, which is Tipu Sultan's time, and Mysore. They've brought big, large-scale industries here. So one is land, second is the community which was available at that point, who were already into making and selling silk, cotton, wool, all kind of things. But I'm going to talk more about silk here because that's the ecosystem. The Binny mills and other mills in Bangalore died out after a point of time because they couldn't create a value. I'll come back to that point. I want to talk about these entrepreneurs and these Maharajas, whatever they did. The bigger companies, Maharaja instituted the Mysore silk weaving mills, and later on larger, I'll just take two names. One was Chamundi and another is Himat Singh. At different points in time, they brought technology in. Weaving technology, spinning technology, twisting technology. With that, they could create newer fabrics. That brings to the topic that Archana was talking. See, originally, the silk saris that we always knew were all yarn dyed. Yarn dyed in the sense the thread was dyed and then woven. And it is a laborious, expensive process. And the traditional silk saris are not thin, they are heavy. So the amount of silk that goes in makes it much more expensive. But what happened in Bangalore, and through this technological crossovers, we started making really lightweight silk saris, not in machine by, not by hand, but by machine. And another key is Bangalore got India's first electricity was brought to Bangalore. So it made power looms accessible by many more people. And technology was available, electricity was available. So a lot more people adapted this technology because they were traditional weavers. They could learn this new machine, how it operates, and they could immediately understand what these larger industries were doing with twisting yarn. And so throughout Chickpete and that area, a lot of them started experimenting with new yarns, new ways of twisting, making new fabrics. And not just fabrics, but new ways of dyeing, new ways of printing. So we have here a printer from Bangalore, Padmini. She's a neighbor from this area. So lots of interesting things kept happening in this backdrop. And another important thing is profit. What I mean by profit is a value generation. For an industry to thrive or run, it needs to generate surplus. And it needs to have relevance. So Bangalore had this community, technology, and lot of community. When I say I want to look at this industry and this ecosystem as very vernacular, as suppose as an industry, because there have been traders in Bangalore, Chickpete area over 150 years. They have had proper establishments running. Very interesting, after putting up this show here, I met Akhil, and Akhil is a collector. He's been collecting postcards and things. He showed me some of these details where he has postcards between Bikaner, Kota in Rajasthan, and Bangalore, where they are sending letters and then correspondence selling zari yarn to the silk industry. So that is a big important thing. Unless we have these networks, and they are all traditionally bound networks, which makes it vernacular. Whatever has happened, it's happening in smaller, unorganized setups across the town, and not just in Chikpete outside, and then later on, Dodbalapur, which is a nearby place, Anekal, Yelahanka, there are lots of places around Bangalore which had this little ecosystems feeding each other. And Ramnagaram definitely is the source. So different communities, different kind of people, dyers and all of them, bringing all this together. So when I talk about myself, if I bring the story on to me, I started working at the year 1999. My first job was in Yelahanka, back in an export house. And after that, last 25 years, I've been across the country working for different textile companies. Now I run my own thing. Now we work across the country with many manufacturers. What does industries do is they bring different kind of people together to a place to work. That's how, that's how I relate with Bangalore story, how an industry, because what I've read is the first and second population spurt that happened in Bangalore was due to textile industry. And today it is called a Silicon Valley, but it was primarily a textile town at that time after agriculture died out. So it's interesting why Silicon Valley is, it's an ecosystem. Silicon Valley is an ecosystem where the semiconductor industry, then Apples and Googles, everything came from there because of the fertile ecosystem it had provided. And that's how I see Bangalore being an ecosystem. So now I just get back to that point of profit and value. This ecosystem, though it is not led by one, two, but many webs of people together and families together, they have pivoted from time to time. Earlier, the industry per se was feeding to Maharajas and then to the war economy. Later on, they found these new interesting ways of making thin, lightweight silk and dress material for domestic usage. Then came a time, lot of wedding gowns and everything was made out of handloom and powerloom materials from Bangalore. That is what clothing. Then came a time in 80s, lot of requirement from the rich developed nations for interior fabrics. Earlier, Europe was making a lot of textile, but after a point, they couldn't sustain that because they couldn't create the value because the manufacturing costs went up and they couldn't sustain that. So that industry starts coming here. So that creates another layer. So there is a domestic and clothing industry, then there is an export industry, which is for clothing as well as for interiors. And today, Indian economy also over these years has become bigger, and this industry serves to the Indian interiors also. So this is the value that created out of here and the value that world has gotten from here. To end this, I just want to mention about a small incident that happened 3 weeks ago, I think. I had a Sunday evening free, so I just went to Malleshwaram. I don't know why I went to Malleshwaram that evening, but I went. And I just remembered that, oh, Malleshwaram has many shops, and my mother had asked me about silk sari, printed silk sari. So I went around checking in the shops. I asked for, I'm looking for a printed silk sari. They asked me, what budget are you looking for? I had no clue how much a silk sari would cost or anything. I didn't know. Budget, I don't know budget, like what is a silk sari? They said, you need to tell us the budget. I said, but I want a pure silk sari. Pure silk sari is there. Or it's on that floor. So, actually today, the so-called silk sari is available from 250 rupees upwards. Depends on what you call a silk. The actual silk that is traded in Ramnagaram, a kilogram of silk costs 4,500 rupees. Okay, that's where the industry is today. I'll leave it at that. Okay.
So I think that's most technical that anybody could get into, and Jeevan is the right person to ask. And when we put up the show in Chitrakala Parishad, the biggest question was everybody wanted to know what is the real silk, how to figure out what silk, how to find out if this is the real quote-unquote Mysore silk or Bangalore silk. And there's so many of these Mysore silk and Bangalore silks. We don't know which is the real one, and we need to figure it out through experience. And this genuine stamp of going and buying, like my grandmother used to go and buy it from one shop, and that guy recognizes me also. So that you have to, I mean, there's no other way that you can identify silk unless you go and buy from the 3 generations of this family going to one particular shop in Chickpet. And they never buy from anywhere else because they think it's not genuine or it's not the right thing that they want to wear. And as you know that silk in other ways is very sacred and auspicious. You never get married in whatever, chiffon, but you have to get married in a silk sari, sometimes dyed in turmeric or otherwise. But this is the story of silk, that each one of us, we are not experts, but in our own fields, that we've tried to, like go into, I never would have gotten into this thing of silk if I have not been doing this 20-year-old project trying to map the city of Bangalore. What has come out of it? 3 books on Bangalore's landscape, Archana's many shows, Jeevan's many explorations, which I think if it would not have happened if I been calling Jeevan and pushing him to do, because he's the best person to do this. And nobody has the patience or the energy or the passion for fabrics. And he has built up this whole thing. I think it's going to become some online thing where you can just look up the story of silk and Bangalore. I'll end here and open the space out for questions if you have any, or yes, please.
We'll just take about 2 questions. We have
Yeah.
that much.
Hi. So here is a weaver and a dyer sitting here, and a textile educator. So yeah, I really like the way you took us from the punch cards to the floppy drives, and then the journey to the jacquards, and now it's like directly going on to the system. Now, one aspect which I really I'm interested in the evolution of textiles around Bangalore. And I'm also an outsider from northern India, so I do want to know more and more around the silk and the cottons. I want to know if you have any idea about the cotton pate, like where were these cottons coming from? And if we could delve a little deeper into how they were woven, because silk, she gave an overview of how it came from China. And I also want to know about where were they dyed, the colors. Where were they coming in from there? That is also one space of my research space where I'm looking at the colors, yeah.
Talking about India or?
No, cotton pate.
The cotton pate,
Cotton came.
the cottons from the Bangalore.
The North Karnataka and all the cotton.
I did like 2 rounds.
Okay, I will
2 rounds
send you
to find out, but couldn't get a link
a quick
there.
answer. It needs
Yeah.
another seminar.
Right.
So you can meet us privately. But cotton was grown in Bangalore, and for all crazy reasons, there were people experimenting growing cotton in Cubbon Park.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this person called Ricketts grew cotton and potatoes just where the Ritz Hotel, there's a hotel, Atria Hotel is. And that was about some 20 acres of plot which the government had given him. Government was giving away land. So this guy built a fabulous colonial home, which has become the Postmaster General's office. And around it, he was growing cotton. And I believe that cotton was the best. So if he was able to do it, he was experimenting. And he was also experimenting with this potato, which is like colonialism and English. It came into us, got into a masala dosa, and we can't do without it. So that is the story. But I think there are many more reasons. I think the people who wove silk also wove cotton. Yes. So there is a connection there.
Okay.
We'll take the next question, sir.
Yeah, that would be.
I'm just curious to know why Coimbatore is called the Manchester of the East and not Bangalore, in spite of having power earlier than Coimbatore.
No, actually Bombay too. But that whole area was called Manchester of East.
So there are many Manchesters.
In spite of Bangalore getting power earlier than Bombay,
Yeah.
Ahmedabad and all,
Yeah.
why it didn't develop in Bangalore?
See, there are some crazy, interesting stories
no,
about.
what I don't understand.
He said why Bangalore, Coimbatore is called Manchester of India.
No,
because
that
of
is-
power looms, right?
No, it's also because of the East India Company, wherever because even for the Bombay to, that Manchester East is, because the whole trading went from, Coimbatore, Cochin, either to Calcutta or to Bombay, and then from there to Glasgow, Manchester and all, and then again having...
Came back here again.
Came back here. So that whole kind of route, which made it the Manchester of East.
But there are certain, like in our research area, I remember in Kochi, I walked into one textile fair and I asked these people who they did not look Malayali. They are in my broken Malayalam, I just asked them, where are you from and all that. They said, we are from Karnataka and we are Devangas. We've settled down here because the Kerala people liked our fabric so much that our Kasavu Mundu is only woven by us because we are the finest Kasavu Mundu weavers that came from Mysore, Bangalore area and settled down in Kochi area. So another thing, you see how these migratory things happen. And when they move, they also take their goddess, Chaudeshwari or something, right? It's a mother goddess. So they take the goddess and they worship her in Kerala in whichever way. So, and if you go to Madurai and you ask, there's some cotton sari which is called Chungudi, which is a cotton sari with has bandhani in it. So how did it come? Because the Saurashtra people came and settled down there.
Actually, in India, lots like that. Patola went from Maharashtra.
Yeah.
And, it's
So these migrations are amazing, and
It
they
is
tell you
very
stories of
interesting.
people, they tell you stories of how...
There is one sloka in Mahabharata describing, it's a very interesting Marathi sloka which describes the Draupadi Vastraharan. So the Krishna basically is the weaver. He represents all weaver, and every weaving community of India, and they name it in the sloka. How many centuries back this was written? All the weavers of India were named that they gave one thread to save Draupadi. This is very metaphoric and very beautifully narrated,
There is another extension of the story in the TV serial of Mahabharat. The sari, which was many yards, which was actually woven by Binny Mills.
Not Binny Mills.
No?
It was...
KSIC.
No, it's that M... huh? No.
I don't
Not
know.
from here. It
But
was
it was
from
woven
Bombay
in-
production, and they had an advertisement coming at that time. So it's also... Don't steal the story from Bombay.
Okay. All yours.
And make it yours. That's the best part.
So speaking of Benny Mills, I was wondering if you could expand on the impact that these, unions that came up in Benny Mills, Minerva Mills, all of those around the city, what kind of impact they had on the city and the fabric of the city.
I think you should.
So there were two cities to begin with, which was the Pete area, and then the British started the cantonment. So anything that's outside of that started with these industries and coming around cotton pit, and then railway station, because city's railway station became the most important thing for all these transportation that could happen. That's why all of them are there. Rajaji Nagar and that entire industrial area came up because of these industries. And whatever happened when they shut down, those people are there and they've already been there for 100 years. So today's most of the auto rickshaw drivers, most of small shop owners and odd job workers and all of them, we are trying to put together, we are collecting stories and everything. So if you see some QR codes, there is a story which will come up, a documentary about these people, what has happened to them, because they are so integral part of the city, and even today, we depend on them for our everyday thing. Just you need to scratch the surface and ask, and then there will be a linkage to Minerva Mills or Binny Mills or something.
No, this is very important. Once a family loses their skills and they become auto drivers or Zomato servers or whatever, then the tradition dies. I know it sounds very romantic, but at the same time, it's a way of life because there's no other way for them to survive, and they have to move. So somewhere in Sampangi Ramnagar area also there are a lot of these mills, and they produce a lot of fabric. So I asked one fellow that they're saying, now we got shift ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. I said, where? He's saying that the rents are very high, so we are moving towards the outskirts of the city. So this is what is going to happen. If they can continue and sustain themselves, the tradition continues in the family. Otherwise, they're going to shift and change. So there's no guarantee for that. And that is the end of a cycle of them migrating into other professions. Because the son might be an IT engineer. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah.
Because of which, and again, it's manual labor and all of that, and it's really not sustainable. So all of them are moving out towards Yalanka, even Dodbalapura. And all of them are changing their professions altogether. So that's how it is.
I mean, those of you who want to work with Sampangi Ramnagar, I think you should do it very quickly because it's changing every day. Every day. It's being gentrified in a kind of a break speed kind of thing.
Bangalore should do it fast.
Yeah.
Like,
And we can help. We can help you.
2009, me, Suresh, Shanti and all, we started documenting the city. And if you start looking at those pictures now, it has changed totally. You know, we have not even realized how it has been growing. But then it's part of, it's good. You know, you can't be very romantic holding it. But also some things could have been retained, you know, yeah.
I mean, retained it for what? I mean, you can't museumize
Some of it can be retained.
Yeah.
It's like Lal Bagh should not go.
But
They still retained.
Yalanka prices are also increasing, so they may have to move out of Yalanka also.
Yeah.
Jeevan, you have to answer.
I
It
couldn't.
should not be fashion industry driven.
But that is also an industry. I wouldn't really shoo it out because that is also one way of earning for certain, because so many people get employment because of that. So many tailors. No, I think both are relevant. I just feel in today's day. Yeah, that. Yeah, not repeating.
So there was a very, I'll just end this conversation. There's a very small photograph or a lithograph which I found in Cubbon Park. I keep scavenging these things because they're very interesting material which you'll never find again. It was a small etching or lithograph of, there is a mountainscape and Shiva and Parvati are in Kailasa, and they're sitting with tiger skin dresses. Very fashionable tiger skin dresses. And just below them, there are these Devangas who have woven the first fabric and they're offering it to Shiva. So till then there was no, I mean, they just want to say that here are tiger skinned, I mean, gods and goddesses who did not have any culture. So now we are offering them this culture of woven fabric. And that is offering it to Shiva of all people. Because, so it's so fascinating to look at this this mythology, the history, the local culture, and this ecosystem which we say, that all existed here. It's dramatically changing, and we can document it, write about it, and obviously cherish it. Thank you very much for a patient hearing.